Hey everybody, we're excited to have another Influencer Academy session. Today we're going to have Imry. He's going to be talking about level setting expectations as a creative. This is great, especially for those that have a creative team and you're trying to work on burnout, getting your employees to know when to go home, making sure that you're just building the right culture and the right environment, especially because we know as creatives there's a lot of expectations, a lot of things coming down your pipeline to get finished. So we know that it can get a little hectic. So hopefully Imry can help shed some light on some solutions to some of those problems. He's been with Harvard Athletics since 2012. So done a lot of great things over there at Harvard, and we're excited to have him here today. So if you can too, in your chat tab over to the right, you can put in some questions for Imry. He'll answer those over in the questions tab on the right. Sorry, not the chat, but he'll answer those throughout at the end of his presentation. And if you can, put in your Twitter handles and your LinkedIn links, and we'll go ahead and send out a networking sheet at the end so that you can just meet some other creatives in the industry. And without further ado, I'm going to let Imry get started.
Thank you. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. Just quick logistics, because I know it looks weird. It looks weird to me. I have two monitors. The front monitor is with my presentation, which is where I'm going to look most of the time. But if you see me look to the left like this, that's where I have the webinar window. And that's where I can see all your names and your questions and your chat. So if I'm looking to the left, it's because I'm paying more attention to you, not less attention. But if you need to get my attention, the chat and the questions are the best way to go about doing this. And so to get started, level setting expectations for a creative team. That's our topic for today. My plan is to keep this to about 30 minutes. I will talk for a little bit and I will leave time at the end for questions. But feel free to interrupt me at any time. Ask any questions you want. I think as we go through this, it's best to ask questions as these topics come up instead of waiting till the end. So feel free to do that. Always remember, if you have a question, likely many other people have the exact same question. So let's get them out there in the open and don't be shy. So what are we talking about today? What is the problem or problems that we're trying to solve? College athletics and creativity. They're relatively a new thing. A new creative content, I guess, is a new and evolving field within college athletics. And how do you prioritize something like that, right? It's something that has evolved over time. It's something that might not be as defined and as consistent amongst different schools. If you think about event management or facility and infrastructure or compliance, these are departments that exist in many colleges and kind of have a place within the structure. But creativity is new. It's more emerging. It's evolving. What creativity and creative content creation was like 10 years ago, 15 years ago is really nothing like what it looks like today. And so how do you really establish a structure for something that's so evolving? And how do you navigate that when it's so inconsistent within a department? You can work for one university where you report to the communications team within athletics, but then you go to another university when you're under marketing, or another university where you have your own standalone department, and another university where you're actually not under athletics. You create athletics content, but it falls under the university as a whole. So how do you really navigate that, and how do you make the most of it? Number 3 is how do you follow up and follow through? Because the thing that universities realize right away when they hire a creative person is that they need 2 creative people. And then when they hire 2, the obvious problem is that they need 3 and 4 and 5. But very few universities actually have the resources to do that, right? To hire multiple creatives. And so how do you navigate that? In a lot of universities, the mentality is that of, what have you done for me lately? It's great that you had this great video last week, but we've moved on now, and now we need other content. Or it's great that you spent all this time working on amazing content for football, but now we're in basketball season. So where's the basketball season? And also it happens to coincide for us with 20 other seasons, since we have 42 teams. And how do you really balance all these needs? How do you say no? We all have to say no. Some of us are more comfortable doing that than others, but we have to find a way to say no in a constructive way. You have to make people understand why you're saying no and what the next step might be. Because if someone comes to you and says, can you do this? And you say no, well, they'll be thrown off guard, and some people, their inclination is going to be to push back unless you explain the reason and give them their next steps. No, but here's what we can do from here. So that's a problem we can discuss. And then how do you know when to go home? That's a conversation that's ongoing. Just today, I've had this conversation with 2 different people, and not from our team, even just people who've reached out to me of there's always more to do. In every field within college athletics, there's always more to do. But how do you know when it's time to say, okay, done for the day, time to go home? And so before we go to the next slide, just a reminder from our friends at Influencer, if you could go to the chat window right now and enter your name, your Twitter handle, and LinkedIn profile link, if that's a thing. That's what they'd like, so they can share a networking spreadsheet, I guess, later on. So go ahead, do that now. In the chat, I can see people typing. That's excellent. Just enter your contact information. Also, this will be recorded, or is being recorded, and will be available later on. Okay, next, the solution. So obviously, there are no easy solutions to any of this. But these are things to think about. These are things for individual contributors, to people who are not managing a team, of how to know if you're doing a good job or not, how to figure out your place within an organization, and how to figure out how not to get burnt out. So number 1, knowing your own value is not good enough. It's something that I used to talk about all the time. If you think that you're good, and if you know that you're contributing to the organization, you're good. But that's just not true anymore, because your goal is not just to show how you're important, but prove that you're important and show that you're connected to the overall organization. If you think that you make the coolest videos in the world, okay, great. You might get a lot of clout on Twitter, as kids say these days. You might have a lot of followers on Instagram. But that's not how you get that next big job. That's not how you get your boss to see your value. And that's not how you get a promotion or more resources within your department. And so what I always tell my team is create content to the mission. What is your department's mission? Why are you there? Are you there to support recruiting? Are you there to support alumni? Are you there to support fundraising? Is your mission all about, for us, it's the integration of academics and athletics? Is that what we're there for? Or is it about national championships and celebrating accomplishments in the postseason? Figure out what your mission is, and then create content to that mission and show it. Be vocal about it. I know that's something that doesn't come easy to a lot of people. And I think that's something, and we'll talk about that in a moment, that your boss can really help out there. But creating an amazing video that has nothing to do with your mission. If your mission is about recruiting and you create an amazing video that has nothing to do with that, then what's the point? And so that's number 1 that I always talk to my team about. Number 2 is you can show the connection and the importance of the creative team by connecting to people outside the creative and communications and marketing department. It's very easy to tell the importance, or to understand the importance of our facilities crew. They make our facilities better. They help build new facilities. They help maintain our facilities and maintain our grounds. It's so easy to understand that. Without them, there'd be no games. How do you show the value of creative content to people who don't live in that world? If you want to talk to your facilities crew, or your events crew, or your compliance crew, and tell them this is really important, or if you have a conversation with your manager, your AD, and say we need more people, say, okay, why? How is this relevant? How is this important? And I think the more you convey that to other people, the more you have champions all over, right? The more that you can explain to them why this is important. And this is a conversation I often have with people, especially as it relates to streaming. Our coaches know why streaming is important. They get all of that. It's helpful for recruiting and content creation. It's great. But then you talk to our facilities people, or you talk to our events people, and they say, well, streaming, we get it. It's important as a whole, but what does it really give us? And so talking to them about how streaming showcases our facilities. Streaming is our way to show off how good we are and how amazing our facilities are and how events are and our teams are for people who can't come to our games. Streaming is the way that we can reach people from far away. Streaming is the way that we can appear on the same level as competitors that are not nearby. We compete in many sports with teams that are not in our conference. And before I was at Harvard, I was at Northeastern University, and we often talked about that with rowing. In rowing, we competed with schools that typically we'd never have any chance competing with. We competed with Harvard or Yale or Princeton or Clemson or the University of Washington, all these big schools that we really wanted to make sure that we look good competing with them, but we don't compete with them in basketball or the other sports. And so streaming is that chance. Streaming is showcasing, hey, I'm competing with these schools you never knew that I competed with, and we showcase how great we are. Don't over-prepare. That's something that I've started talking to my team about a lot recently. It's good to prepare. It's good to think things through. And if you're preparing to talk and to create creative content and storyboarding and everything, it's all great. But some projects are so big that if you spend so much time talking about them and planning for them, it will seem too risky. And you'll say, well, this is such a big thing. Maybe we should just aim lower. And the problem with aiming lower is that everyone can do it. The goal with creative content is to show how you're different and how your team is special and how you can do so many special things. And so if you over-prepare, you scare yourself, you scare your boss, you scare your finance department when you start talking about costs. And that's not to say you should hide anything, but it's to say, okay, I know enough and I'm going to take a risk now. And that's something that we do all the time at Harvard. We did that a lot in the streaming world. We had our skiing coaches come to us before COVID, 2019. They came and said, oh, can you stream our ski carnivals, which were in New Hampshire and Vermont. Massive productions with drone coverage, lots of cameras, all remote, all out of our controls. Never did anything like this before. We just said yes, because we figured, hey, this is something that is important for us to do. We know enough that we think, we can probably make this work. But if we try to figure it too much, we could scare ourselves with the possibilities. Well, what if there's too much snow? What if there isn't enough snow, which is what happened? What if people don't show up? What if our cameras don't work and it's too cold? All these things we just figure out as part of the process, but we take a risk. And that's how innovation works. Don't make excuses, right? I always say, make content, not excuses. And this has to do with the previous page of following up and following through. No one cares about your problems. They care about your solutions. And so if you have a problem, which is obviously a real thing, then come to your manager with a solution. Say, hey, I have this problem. We want to create content that's, this important for this reason, but we can't do it because we need different gear. We need to rent additional equipment. We don't have the staffing. We're already working 60 hours a week. But here's a solution. We could do it, but we can do it next week. We can do it, but we have to rent out some gear. We can do it, but we need to pull away some staff from other things that they're doing. So always come with that extra step of, here's all our problems, but here's how we want to solve them. And if you need permission, if it's something that requires permission, great, get permission. But if not, just give a plan. This is what we want to do. This is our plan. FYI, I'm just keeping you in the loop. And that's something that's very important to managers, keeping them in the loop, telling them that you're on it, that you're on the job that they gave you, but here is the progress. And speaking of progress, no one is perfect. And, hiding mistakes or hiding from mistakes is never a good idea. I have made many, many mistakes in my career. And the best you can do is own up to them. If it's something that someone else needs to know, tell someone else. Tell them this is what happened and these are the solutions, or this is the repercussions and this is what it's going to cost for us to fix this. If it's something that you don't need to tell everyone else, then great, just learn on your own, but then accept what happened. This is a technical thing, but I always tell people this example. We were very much into drones these days, but early on we were just experimenting with drones. And I may or may not have crashed a couple of our drones into our stadium or on our fields, and it was just because I was taking risks and playing with them. But we figured it out, we learned. I was very upfront about what had happened. And then we move on. Trying to hide it and trying to pretend it didn't happen means that A, you're never going to learn, and B, you're going to get more and more scared from making mistakes because you don't want anyone to find out, and then you can't be creative. And then this thing which I've been going back and forth with in my head over the years, are titles important or not? I always used to say titles aren't important. We have lots of leaders in our department who don't have the titles for it and are just those kinds of people who lead the way. The problem is that titles do matter, because when you want to get a promotion or when you want to move on to another job, people are going to look at your title and say, oh, so you've been at this job for this many years and you never changed your title, or, you say you do all these amazing things, but your title doesn't reflect it. Your titles are important. The titles should reflect what you do. And I think there is a bigger understanding of that now. And what individual contributors can do is be honest with their managers and say, listen, I feel like my actual responsibilities no longer reflect what I actually do. Can we talk about updating my title? Can we talk about updating my job description so that when it's relevant later on and HR needs to pull it up, it's actually reflective of what's going on? I'm going to go to my next slide now. I think there are only two more, but if you have any questions, just as a reminder, feel free to write them in the question tab. So the solution to our problem, but what can managers do? So number one is micromanagement. Micromanagement destroys productivity. That's number one, and that's what I tell everyone who talks with me about this. Managers, you have to be realistic. A manager, a leader, they're going to assign tasks to you. They're going to ask for progress reports. They're going to want to review whatever the final product is and provide their feedback, and that's all great. But standing over your shoulder or providing too much feedback or not giving you the creative freedom, that's a problem. That means that you end up no longer creating content for what you think your target audience is, but you create content that you think will be approved by your manager. And your manager is not your target audience, or at least they shouldn't be. And so that's something that managers really have to watch out for. Trust your people, hire good people, trust them to do their job properly, and then let them do it. Manage to the passion, not the to-do lists. That's also something tricky, because managers have a very long to-do list and you just want to assign things to people. But people are passionate about different things, and you really, really get different kinds of content and different kinds of results when you give people projects to work on that they're passionate about. And the thing is that passion changes with time. And so if you see someone on your team who's really passionate about graphic design right now, give them more graphic design projects, even if it's not in their job description. And if they evolve and they discover After Effects more, and they want to do more animation, or discover Premiere and want to do more video editing, assign those kinds of projects, even if it's not what you had planned originally, even if it's not in their job description. This is how they learn. This is how they are creative. This is how they really find their passion. Next, we talked about this, but trust people, and trust them not to be mistake-free, but to learn from their mistakes. I have people on my team make mistakes all the time, and that's okay, as long as they own up to it. And then we talk about the best way to learn from these mistakes and then not to repeat them again. We all make mistakes, but how do you make sure you don't make the same mistake twice? Regular feedback, that's something we do all the time here. We all have performance evaluations, things we have to do at the end of the year, but the last thing you want is for anyone on your team to have a surprise when you do their performance evaluation, to say, whoa, now you're telling me I'm terrible at my job. Why didn't this come up before? And vice versa. If you don't want to tell someone they're amazing just at the end of the year, regular check-ins. That's the best way that a manager can provide feedback. And it also makes sure that if there's something that needs to be addressed, it's addressed quickly and not slowly. If someone is really struggling, someone creates great content, but you never, as a manager, you never hear about it. You give them a project, and then a month later, the project is done and you don't know what's going on in that month. Provide that feedback. Say, listen, I need more regular updates. Let's meet weekly. Let's send me an email every other week. Tell me where you are in the project. And then when you get to the end of the year, you not only talk about how this person is doing, but you can talk about progress. You can say, this person, there were a couple of areas for improvement during the year. We talked about them, and this person improved. There's really no problem there. That's exactly what you want your people to do. Teaching young creatives how to think, not what to think. I think that's very important. Again, you don't want creatives to create content for their manager. You want it for the target audience. And so that's how you think about how to think. It's how to think about creativity is always a very, very tricky thing. How do you think about content creation and hitting your target audiences, and also making content for most of us that can be templated so that someone else can update it? Thinking about those things and thinking big picture is how managers can help creatives on their team. Be the leader you wish you had. I talk about this all the time. This is just, I've had a lot of really good managers over the years, and some managers that I would say have not been as great. And I always keep those two types of managers in mind when I make decisions or when I try to lead my team. Because if you had managers that weren't great, you have the opportunity to fix things. If you had managers that raised their voice at you all the time, or managers that told you they were disappointed at you, but never told you how to fix your mistakes, or managers who micromanaged, these are things that you can be aware of and then fix. And I think that's very important. Expect perfection. I always have my team tell me that I expect perfection, and that's just not realistic, and that's fine. But if you don't expect perfection, you're never even going to have people striving for it. Setting up those stretch goals and telling people, I really want this to be perfect with no mistakes, realizing internally that that might not be possible, but you want people dedicated to the job and you want them trying to be perfect. That's very important, and I always strive for that. Train employees to be leaders. We talked about the difference between individual contributors and managers. That's fine. Managers are people who have a responsibility to manage a team, but everyone can be a leader. Everyone can lead by example. Everyone can show others what to do. I have so many people on my team who don't have the title of manager or leader, but constantly lead others and show others how to behave and how to create. And I think that's something you as a manager have to do. You have to empower your employees to say, yeah, you're big into Photoshop. That's great. Go teach the interns how to use Photoshop. Teach the interns how to create graphics and best practices for posting them on social media. Go do that, even if it's not necessarily your job, your role. You become a better leader for later on. And then finally, the most important thing is setting expectations for time off and then following them yourself. I always tell my team, remember to take time off, remember to take time for yourself. But if they always see me in the office all the time, day in, day out, then they're going to understand that even though I said you have to take time off, that's not the expectation. The expectation is that when I'm here, they're here. And so I take time off and I tell them, I'm very visible about it. I say, listen, I'm going to be working from home, or I'm going to take vacation. I encourage you all to do that. And for people who are not comfortable doing that, I end up forcing them. I say, listen, you have a lot of vacation days. We don't have anything else going on right now. Please leave. Please just go, take some time away, walk around the city, sit at home, watch Netflix, do whatever you want to do. But I want to make sure you have time away to clear your head and not always be here. And people find that refreshing because sometimes they're worried, they're afraid to take time off. And I think if a manager can tell them that it's okay and show them that it's okay, that's very important. Finally, I think that's my last slide. Yeah, finally, the metrics. So how do you know if you're doing a good job, both as an individual contributor and as a manager? How do you know that you're making progress? So number one, team members saying I can do anything but not everything. So we talked about this early on in the problem. How do you say no? And this is it. You don't want someone to come up and say, I can't work on this project. You given me this project? I can't. I don't have time. What they should say is, I can do anything you'd like me to do. I can absolutely work on this new project. What would you like me to de-emphasize right now while I'm working on this? I'm working on 1, 2, 3 right now. You want me to work on number 4? Absolutely. Out of 1, 2, and 3, which one should I stop working on for now? And that shows a team that understands that, there are certain projects that take priority, but they can't just say no. They can't just say I'm not doing something, or they don't want to overwhelm themselves and then do a terrible job at everything. They can prioritize and they can be very transparent about it. Team members saying I'm going home, I'll continue this project tomorrow. That's great. I always want to hear that. It's the end of the day. You're not done with something. You know when it's due. If it's not due yet, go home. Team members asking for help. No one knows everything. If you come to my door, come to everyone else's door and say, hey, I need help. Always great. Team members saying I have a crazy idea. Can I try it? I finish all my meetings, all the meetings I have with my team, with an open forum for innovation. I just sit there awkwardly and wait for people to talk as they stare at me, waiting to say something else. But it's an open forum for them to just throw out any ideas for innovation. Anything relating to creative content creation, relating to written material, relating to equipment we should buy, relating to things that they've seen other teams do, other universities do. The crazier, the better. I always tell them I can't promise that we'll get everything done, but if we don't suggest it, we're just going to be stuck. We're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And if someone comes to me and says, I have a crazy idea, can I try it? That shows A, that they're into innovation and that they want to try new things, and B, that they want to take ownership over it. They want to try something, and if it fails, and we move on, and now we know what works and what doesn't. But if they want to take ownership, that's great. Administrators thing, let's get input from the creative team before we move forward. That's the number one role for creative leaders. It's to run interference for their team so that the team can get their job done, and to champion what their team does with everyone else. When I meet with our athletic director or our deputy athletic director or with anyone else in the administration, constantly talk about the kind of content that my team is creating, the kind of content that we want to create, the resources we have, the resources we need. Talk about the importance of what we do and how it incorporates into our mission, so that when there is a new initiative, they can say, okay, well, this clearly involves the creative team, the content team. Let's get their input. Administrators saying, can you take this on, or is there already too much on your plate? I think that's always very important. Be very, very transparent with resources. These are the number of people we have. This is what we can accomplish, and this is what we can't. And if they ask for something that they can't, they have to have visibility to know that this is something that's a little too much. And then finally, administrators asking, what do you need to succeed? And that's something that's very, very big, especially as we have budget conversations. You can't promise anything, but you say, okay, you have people. What do you need? Do you need more people? Do you need more equipment? Do you need more facilities? Do you need improvements to facilities? And having that visibility and that honest conversation about where we are and where we want to go, I think is very important. I just had a message if my connection is restored. I hope people can still see me and hear me, but if not, let me know. So I think that was my last slide. Got it in 27 minutes, which is great. But let's open it up for some questions. No one has asked any questions yet, but do you have any questions? Anything you want to address? Any slides you want to get me back to? Either ask in the questions or in the chat. Anything relating to setting expectations as a manager or as an individual contributor? Any experiences that you had that you want to share? Things you struggled with? How to create content? How to make sure people understand that content is important? How to make sure that you have the resources you need to create the content? Go for it. Questions, chat, anything. As I tell my team all the time, I'm not going to get awkward. I'm not going to feel awkward. There we go. A question from Michael Black. What is your recommendation for a creative team with limited resources when a coach sees content from a bigger school with more resources and wants to do the same thing? Excellent question. We experience this all the time. We're honest. Number one is that we're honest. We have to say, listen, just because you saw whoever, Clemson, do an amazing content that took them 11 months to accomplish and they had their whole team do it, doesn't mean that we can't do it. So number one is, what did you actually like over there? If there's something that you want us to replicate, let's dig deep in. Did you like that they had behind the scenes footage? Did you like that they have a mic'd up? Did you like that you had a creative go with them on the road? Like, what was actually important there? And once we start digging in, is it something we can actually accomplish? That's number one. Number two, we're always very, very honest with our coaches about resources. We say, listen, this is who we are. This is what we can do right now. If we need more resources to accomplish what you want us to accomplish, have that conversation with the athletic director, because me telling our athletic director the same thing over and over again is repetitive. But if coaches start saying it, if our football coach goes over there and says, Imry wants more staff, and this is why we want him to have more staff, that makes an impact. That makes an impression. And number three is, be honest. And we're actually having these conversations with our coaches right now. You want us to do X that big school is doing? Sure, we can try it. But what can we take off our plate right now? We do all these schedule posters for you. Very, very labor intensive. There's a lot of cost to printing. Can we stop those so we can do something on the digital side for you? And that, coaches are never comfortable saying no to anything because they just want more and more. And I think that's fair. That's the world they have to come from. But if you show them that resource need, the fact that if you want more of this, we need to do less of this, I think they appreciate that. But at the end of the day, we all have limited resources, even us here at Harvard, and we have to be realistic about what we do and realistic about where we can add and where we can stop doing. We used to do radio for all our games. We don't do that anymore. That money can now go towards digital initiatives. So thanks for the great question, Michael. Hopefully I answered that a little bit. Question from David. What do you suggest for a solo creator who failed to set appropriate expectations and is now beyond burned out and not sure how to move forward? Oh my goodness, this is such a common problem. Not setting expectations early on. And I think it's never too late to set expectations. You just have to present it like that. Say, listen, I love working for you. I really do. The kind of content you push me to do is amazing. We get noticed by it. I get motivated by it. It's really great. I feel like the amount of content that's been asked right now is so much that I really don't have time to step back. I don't have time to think. I don't have time to leave the office. And so I'm going to scale back a little bit. I'm just, I'm being honest with you. And I need your help. I need your help to tell me what's important and what's less important, what we should make sure gets done right away and what can wait a little bit. Again, this is a very difficult conversation regardless. It's not that someone is going to be comfortable telling you, yeah, do less, go home. That's fine. I get that. But honesty is always the best policy, and prioritization goes a long way. Say, listen, I'm still going to be here in the office for 9 to 5 or whatever, and I want to make sure that during my time here in the office, I prioritize what's important to you, ex-coach, ex-administrator. Tell me what it is. Will there be a struggle? Yes, there's going to be a struggle. No one wants you to work less because they want the content, but I think it's never too late to set expectations. And the longer you wait, the more difficult it's going to be. So start now. Blame me. I always tell my team, blame me. Say, Imry told me to do this. You should feel free to do that as well. Hopefully that helps. Greg. Hey, Greg. How's it going? Going off Michael's question, do you ask any teams to produce and distribute content within their own staff? For example, have an assistant coach to do it. A very good question, Greg, and something that we are dealing with right now. Some of our bigger teams have hired part-time creative content creators to create content, which I have pushed back on. I said, listen, we can't do this. We can't go to every practice. There's just we can't do it. So if you want content, you have to prioritize. And they decided instead of prioritize to raise money and hire their own people. Pros and cons. The con is obviously I don't control these people. And so their content looks different. They don't follow our branding. They sometimes use the wrong logo. They definitely use wrong music and sometimes get in trouble for it. It's a problem. On the pro side, obviously, there's a lot more content that I don't have to manage. Not only that, it's a lot of content that's really close to the coaches. So the coaches can sit there and say, this is exactly what I want. This is what I don't want. Just make content for this. So pros and cons. We are, in full transparency, trying to move more of that in-house, more of that under the content team so that we can use those resources to support everyone and have a little bit more control. But I would say my initial reaction is not to say no. It's to say, okay, but here are some guidelines. Here's the music you can use and the music you can't use. Here's our graphics toolkit. So here are logos you should use and you should not. Here is content I'm comfortable with you posting on your own, and here's what's not. And also realize that there's a cost involved there. And so if you ask an assistant coach to do it, fine, but what is that assistant coach not doing when they're doing content? Or if you want to hire a temporary employee or a student or someone, that's cost that's going to have to be covered by your team. And so are you willing to take that on? And you know what? It helps some coaches see that there's a cost involved with content creation. It's not just more and more and more and more and more. There's a cost there. I know of some schools who have had several coaches chip in together and say, okay, we're going to get another content person, sit in the office, and they're going to support these other sports that can pay for that. And I think that's, again, tricky when you're trying to balance all the sports, but it's a reality. So I'm not 100% against it with some controls there. Hopefully that helped. Thanks, Greg. Reeves. Reeves. If your only allowance of a creative team is student workers, how do you make them feel valued and that the work is worthwhile without a salary behind the job? And how do you dole out more repetitive project tasks to student workers without boring them? Those are both very, very good questions. I am very much against unpaid labor. I'm just against it. I think it's completely unfair to ask someone to do something for you, especially an organization, and not pay them. We have to be realistic. Sometimes you have to pay them very, very little. There's minimum wage. I get all of that, and that's fine. But I always push back on unpaid labor, unpaid students. I think it's not fair. I know they're learning, but they are providing a service, and either you personally or the university, is getting a benefit from it for us. So I know that I'm not trying to convince you, but I'm just saying this is what I always tell everyone. Number two is, if you can't pay people, or if you can pay them little, which is some of our student crew, I try to, within my budget, and I started this a long time ago and I've grown it within my budget, there are budget line items for how to compensate these people. Give them jackets, give them polo shirts, give them pizza, give them opportunities to tour other facilities that for pro sports in the area. Give them opportunities to use equipment that they don't typically get to use. Try to find ways to compensate them without money. I think they appreciate that. People really, really love all the hats we give them and all the jackets we give them. Feeding people is always very important. And when you give them these professional development opportunities that often don't have a cost to them, they also appreciate that because we show them it's a way to network and a way to get to meet people. We've had people tour the Red Sox control rooms with us and then end up getting jobs at the Red Sox or at the Bruins. And I think that's a way to show value. Repetitive tasks. I mean, there's a lot of our jobs are repetitive, and that's just the reality. Trying to rotate who gets the repetitive jobs, I think that's fair, but also showing why it's important, even if it's repetitive. Doing graphics for one of our broadcasts. Graphics are graphics, and updating the score bug can only keep you interested for so long. But I try to show the bigger picture. Look at this game on ESPN, and I try to show this, and not to call anyone out, but I try to show my team examples of bad content, bad production, bad graphics, bad videos as well, and show them this is what it looks like when we don't have someone like you sitting here. If we don't have someone doing graphics for a broadcast, if we don't have someone doing in-game stats or in-game live tweeting, here's what it looks like. Look at how either less interesting it looks or less engaging or how much fewer followers they have, and this is why it's important. So connecting it back to the importance, I think, is always good. And then, as you said, rotating the monotonous, repetitive tasks is always a good idea as well. Okay, one other thing. Let's do this. The last question from Matthew. What are some ways in the past that you might have had success on gaining additional resources for your creative team? You touched on it a bit, but just was hoping you could go a little more in depth into some successful ways to approach the higher-ups with a plan to show them why additional people equipment is needed. So, full disclosure, I started here at Harvard 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, just me. I needed to buy something off B&H. I think it was a BNC cable or something, I don't remember. And I had to, it was nothing, it was $12. And I had to go get permission from multiple people in the finance office, and it was a slog. When I interviewed for this role, the athletic director actually asked me what my operating budget was at Northeastern, my previous role. I told him what it was, and he laughed right there in the interview and said, there's no way you're going to be able to spend that kind of money here, which almost made me not take the job here at Harvard. But what I told him, and I was 100% transparent, is listen, we're not going to need that amount of money that I use at Northeastern. We're going to need twice as much or 3 times as much. And I know you can't give that to me right now, but this is what I'm going to strive for, and I'm going to strive for more people. And, he smiled and nodded, and I didn't forget that. I kept on pushing. So my second year at Harvard, we had an intern. And my third year at Harvard, we had 2 interns, and then 3 interns. And then I got a full-time assistant. And now we have a director of multimedia and 2 full-time assistant directors of multimedia and 2 interns. And there wasn't a time where someone said, you know what, 1 person is not enough, let's have 5. There was never a time for that, but I kept on pushing, and I kept on showing the importance, and I kept on trying to be visible with what we did. I presented during our all staff meetings. I sent all staff emails with updates on metrics and viewership and importance of video. Every time there were budget meetings, every time I asked for more people. And it took me 5 years to get my full-time assistant, 5 years. But if I hadn't pushed for that in those 5 years, I'm sure it wouldn't have happened in year 5. So constantly asking, constantly showing the connection and the importance. And that's where the importance of answering or saying no is. No, I can't do this. But if we had, twice as many people here, we could do twice the work. And so always tying it back to, I wish we could do more, but we don't have the resources. Equipment, I think, is a little easier. People tend to approve equipment without as many levels of approval as needed because there aren't recurring costs. It's not like staffing where you have to pay them every year. And so I try to, it's easiest for me to get approval for equipment that the public would see an impact of immediately. We need a DSLR camera or a mirrorless camera because we can't keep having our phones used for content creation. That's just not realistic. That's not a good idea. It will look better and we will compete better with our peers. And so trying to explain that, and then, sorry, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. I think I can do that now. There we go. Trying to also set up a timeline for equipment replacement and equipment needs. Here, we just got this Sony A7R4, I think, just got that the other day. We didn't start with that. We started with worse cameras. And I said, listen, this is not what we want. We want to start slow, but we'll get some lenses. We'll be a Sony shop. We'll get some Sony lenses, and then we'll improve our cameras. And so try to set up that plan and set up a replacement plan, which I do with our budget process with our finance office every time. It's, listen, we bought this, but this is going to be fine for 4 years. And then in 4 years, we're going to need something different. So let's start budgeting for that now. For streaming, we have switchers, we have replays, we have cameras, and those are all great. But in 4 years, we need to replace them. And even if they don't fail in 4 years, the last thing you want is for a camera to fail mid-football game. So let's plan on replacing them every 4 or 5 years. And our budget office has been amazing in putting money aside every year and saying, okay, well, you can't have that money right now, but in 4 years and then staggered after that, we're going to have money to replace the things that you say are most important to replace right now. So transparency, I think, is important, and having a plan and saying, I don't need to spend $1 million today, but in 10 years, I want to spend $1 million, or $100,000 or $10,000. Here's how I plan to get there. And I think that's what we've done. People look at us and say, oh, Harvard, you have money. And my joke that I tell everyone is, we're down to our last $50 billion. Things are tough here at Harvard too. But not really, obviously I don't have $50 billion, and everyone has budget limitations and everyone has limited resources. And you just have to be transparent on where you want to go and how you think you can take people along for the ride. Not just say, I want to get there and I expect you to meet me there, but here's how we can get there together and work on this together. So that's my long answer. I hope that answered a bit of it. Thank you, everyone, for your time. I think Nikki wanted to rejoin again. Maybe not. But thank you. There it is. There's Nikki. Thank you, everyone, for your time and these great questions. Nikki, do you have any parting words?
Yeah, no, thanks, guys, for coming on. Hope you guys had a good time listening to Imry. I know a couple of you mentioned that you follow him on Twitter, and so do we. We love following him. He drops a lot of good information every single day. So just keep an eye out for some upcoming Influencer Academy sessions. We're going to have some designers here in the next couple of weeks. So just keep an eye out for those to get registered. We'll see you guys later. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone.